Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the Explainer, Project Professionals. Today, we are taking on a massive, high-stakes challenge, mastering the Project Management Institute's Risk Management Professional Certification, or as we all know it, the PMI-RMP. Whether you're literally sitting for the exam next week or you're just here to radically upgrade your risk management skills, this Explainer is your definitive masterclass. We're going to break down the entire framework into 5 domains, all driven by one unified, totally unstoppable mindset. Get ready because we are transforming how you look at project uncertainty.
I want to anchor us in reality right out of the gate. Your immediate goal on exam day is staring right at you, 115 questions, and you have exactly 150 minutes to conquer them. If you do the math, that is barely over a minute per question. But here's the real secret to getting through those 115 questions. You absolutely cannot rely on passive memorization. Memorizing glossary terms? Yeah, that's not going to save you here. The exam heavily tests scenario-based judgment. To pass, you have to actively adopt the PMI logic. You need to think exactly how the PMI expects a seasoned, highly disciplined risk professional to think.
To guide us through this logic, we are drawing heavily on the brilliant course materials from instructor Florence Kimani. Her core philosophy literally unlocks the correct answers on the test. She says weak planning creates weak identification, weak analysis, weak responses, and poor monitoring. Think about that for a second. If you mess up step 1, every single step after it falls apart like a house of cards. Keep this front and center in your mind as we go through today's explainer.
To win this game, you need to know the battlefield and exactly where the heavy hitters are. Strategy and planning is 22% of the exam. Risk identification is 23%, and risk analysis is another 23%. Right there, you have nearly 70% of your total score. Response and monitoring make up the rest. Test takers so often lose valuable points by rushing straight to responses without doing the heavy lifting in planning and analysis. Please don't fall into that trap.
So, here is our chronological roadmap for today. Strategy planning, risk identification, risk analysis, risk response, and finally, monitor and close. Let's reveal the specific exam mindset required to pass each section.
Domain 1. Strategy Planning, the evidence-first mindset. This domain makes up roughly 1/5 of your exam, and it tests how you set up the environment before you even think about doing detailed risk work. A classic scenario question will say something like, "You've just been assigned as a risk manager. What do you do next?" Well, amateurs will choose schedule a brainstorming workshop. They just grab a whiteboard and start guessing. But PMI professionals, they analyze evidence first. Before you identify risks, you have to review historical documents, assess enterprise environmental factors, understand the organizational culture, and figure out the project context. You absolutely must gather the evidence before you gather the people. So, the crucial point is how you handle the organization's appetite for risk. You know, you can have a really broad, vague risk appetite, but that won't help your team make fast, on-the-ground decisions. You have to convert that broad appetite into a strict risk threshold. It's a specific, measurable point that triggers an action or an escalation. For example, any delay over 2 weeks must be escalated to the sponsor. Imagine trying to run a massive construction project without that rule. You'd have team members hiding delays until it's way too late. Setting these measurable rules up front is the hallmark of a truly successful risk strategy. Moving on to Domain 2, Risk Identification, the meta-language mindset. This domain is a solid 23% of the exam. Now, identification is not just sitting in a room having a casual complaint session. It is a highly disciplined search using specific meta-language. A weak statement sounds like a vague worry. Oh, the vendor might delay. You cannot properly analyze or assign ownership to that. A strong PMI-approved statement uses a strict cause-risk-effect structure, something like, because permits are pending, parts may arrive late, leading to schedule slippage. Now that is actionable. When you use that structure, you instantly know what needs to be monitored, the permits, and what the actual damage could be, the schedule. Next up, Domain 3, Risk Analysis, the prioritization mindset.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive trap candidates fall into here. They assume that qualitative analysis is just subjective guesswork, or somehow less important than heavy, data-driven quantitative analysis. That is completely wrong. Qualitative analysis is all about prioritization, using a probability impact matrix to group risks, and it is applied to every single identified risk without exception. Quantitative analysis, on the other hand, calculates actual numerical exposure using complex tools like expected monetary value or Monte Carlo simulations. Because these tools take significant time and money, quantitative analysis is only applied selectively where the value justifies the effort.
And remember, as you analyze, you aren't just scoring known risks. You're using tools like SWOT analysis, Ishikawa cause and effect diagrams, and tree diagrams to actually reveal brand new threats and opportunities. If you're building out an Ishikawa diagram, often called a fishbone diagram, to analyze why a specific risk might occur, you will almost certainly uncover underlying root causes you hadn't even considered. Analysis is an iterative process. It connects the complexity of your project directly to organizational compliance and strategic objectives.
Domain 4, risk response, the proportionality mindset. Your response absolutely must be directly proportional to the risk. If you over-control a minor risk, you waste valuable project resources. But if you under-control a major risk, you actively invite disaster. Notice how PMI treats negative threats versus positive opportunities. Yes, positive risks are a thing. PMI treats opportunities as project value just waiting to be captured. If you have a threat, you might avoid it. But if you have an opportunity, you exploit it, like finishing a phase early and reallocating resources to save money. You might mitigate a threat, but you enhance an opportunity to increase its benefits.
Let's anchor two of the most common threat responses. Mitigating is taking an active, tangible step to reduce the probability or impact of a risk, like adding extra software testing or conducting safety training before you break ground. Accepting, however, that's a calculated decision. It means acknowledging the risk is within your tolerance, deciding not to take active steps right now, and preparing a contingency or fallback plan just in case. It is never passive ignoring. It is active acknowledgement.
Let's move to the final domain and see how this all builds together. Domain 5, monitor and close, the evidence-based mindset.
Monitoring is not just sending out a static monthly report with red, yellow, and green status lights. It is a continuous, living pulse of your project. Let's walk through the exact logic of evidence-based closure. Step 1. You must monitor if your response was actually effective. Just because someone completed a task doesn't mean the risk exposure went down. Step 2. You check for residual risks, what's left over, and secondary risks. For example, did your solution of changing suppliers accidentally create a brand new quality problem? Step 3. You only document closure with hard, concrete evidence. So there are very specific reasons a risk actually gets closed. It might expire because a specific time window or deadline passed. Or it might be successfully avoided, or an opportunity might be fully captured. Sometimes a risk actually happens, and it's converted to an issue that needs immediate management. And this brilliantly illustrates a massive exam trap. Risk should never, ever be deleted silently just to clean up a spreadsheet. Every closed risk must have a documented reason and a captured lesson learned so the rest of the organization can actually benefit. I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. What is one risk in your current real-world project that needs to be reassessed, escalated, or properly closed out today? Don't just leave this explainer and go back to passive management. Apply this 5-domain PMI mindset right now. Gather your evidence, use your meta-language, prioritize ruthlessly, respond proportionately, and monitor like your project's life depends on it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I will see you in the next explainer.